we have learned from one of our mentors, one of the big context shifting ways of looking at OPM is that it's not the cost of the money that's the most important.
Right.
It's the availability of it. You know, are you going to sit there and turn your nose up at a deal because you have to pay 15% interest? If there's 30% profit in the deal, guess what? You still get 15%, right? You know, depending on how you look at it. So, you know, if the deal is good enough to support the numbers, right, that's something to be taken into consideration. If you can either have expensive money be available in time or cheaper money be available when it's available or in a few months, what's going to be what's required to get you the deal. And from a mindset shift standpoint, it's like, okay, let's say if someone threw crazy numbers at you, 24%, that's 2% a month, but let's just say you only needed the money for 2 months. So, you know, we talk about private, we talk about hard money, we talk about your own funds, we talk about conventional, and that's where you even start to get into certain, you know, boutique service offerings called transactional funds. And you'll hear different terms like, you know, wet funding and dry funding, all these different terms, basically where someone is just there as kind of like a bridge loan, right? Oh, your so-and-so banker can't fund to the first, and now something happened with the transaction and you have to close it on the 28th or lose the deal. Call us. We'll only charge you an extra point or two, and the loan's like good for literally 72 hours, but it's meant to be that, you know, when you're in a pinch, there's these bridge funds, bridge loans that are available to kind of help, you know, the baby falling out of the tree. Something's got to be there to catch it till the swoop comes through with the rest of the cash to close things out. But, you know, a lot of people don't know that something like that is even available. They call them transactional funds that can be used. They're really like emergency funds where they, you know, they just clip the coins, get their piece for providing value, a point or two or whatever their fees are to basically be there for you. You can look up transactional funding in your area. You can probably Google it and find a lot of times hard money lenders that are bigger ones, they will do transactional funding, and they've got different packages. I mean, through the years, we've seen great ads from hard money lenders talking about, you know, mortgage programs for renters and all sorts of different things. So, you know, no FICO needed, or, you know.
Go to the Magic Kingdom. Magic Kingdom?
Yeah.
Who knows what the Magic Kingdom is? Who remembers? Go to your Magic Kingdom, aka your title company, aka your closing attorney's office. Ask them for transactional funders also. They'll give you names and contact information. A lot of times you use transactional funding when you are doing a double close, and the title company will not allow the end buyer's funds to close the first transaction. There are still title companies that will do it, but many don't, and so that's where transactional funding comes into place.
Yeah, that's another great use case there. Yeah. Wholesale assignment fee too big, you need to double close this thing? All right, here's how you can handle it. Is that your girl calling?
Yes, but it's okay.
It's payday calling. You need to pick up the phone. Better grab that. Off you go. Off you go. All right.
Hello, this is Risha.
We weren't playing. Got a closing taking place. We need to take that call. But yeah, so different examples of what funding situations can look like in your business. There's so much more out there by way of resources that we can sometimes think of. But if we are trapped in if our mindset shrinks down to the size of the deal and gets trapped in this little ball of like this one deal, you're going to get hamstrung sooner or later when you look at bigger deals, because your mind is kind of operating in this little fish tank thinking, I need to come up with this amount of money, or I need to find this buyer, or this deal, or, you know, things are tight with the windows and the timing. There's all sorts of additional ways to be able to get access to funding. So let's see, now that we're just having fun rattling off the top of the brain, we've talked about transactional funding. Let's even talk about gap funding. Who's ever heard of, anybody ever heard of gap funding? So gap funding is used typically in a little bit different scenario. So let's just say you've got, you figured out like, hey, I can use, you know, Uncle Johnny, Tio Rico, his $100,000 to close this deal, and he'll only charge me 10%, or he'll charge me 12%, you know, for easy math. So I'm gonna owe him $1,000 a month interest only. But, you know, I can probably figure out a way to make money on this deal because I'm getting it at a good enough discount that if I can just dispose of it or fix it up and flip it, that within 6 months, I'm sure I could have $150,000. It's like, okay, great. Let's think about this a little bit. So here's one potential scenario. So now you've closed on this property, and let's just say you've got 30-day runway before your first payment's due on that grand a month that you're going to be on the hook for. But now you're figuring, I just need to buff and touch it up, right? You're going to maybe go, the wholesale route as an example, but you want to just give it a little bit more oomph because you can throw some sweat equity and some cheap bucks at it. So maybe you figure for, let's say, $10,000. You can get this thing like retail ready in your mind with some sweat equity and a few dollars, so now you'd be all in for 110. So you'd still see a gross profit of, 40K that you'd be looking at, right? Well, here could be the issue. You've got all the labor love in the world, but you got no dough. And so one creative measure could be like, all right, well, maybe you go out and raise 10 grand from a gap funder. You basically access their cash or their Visa and MasterCard, right, to get, a little tab set up at Home Depot or Lowe's to get all your stuff. And then you essentially have your fix-up budget. But in these situations, what the gap funder generally does is you've got like an open line of credit or up to X amount to use for the fix-up. But the cost of that fix-up is going to be a portion of the profit, right? And that's generally going to be in the range of like half. So that's something to be taken into account because, while one mindset could say, oh my God, I got to give them up half my profits. Well, half of what? Half of what wasn't there before you had the funding? So it was like when we first heard of gap funding, we thought, oh my gosh, that's like a Shark Tank type of thing. But it's actually genius because in some cases you might have TO Rico that can close on the property. You just need fix-up funds. And by the way, there's actual conventional loans that are structured in this type of way as well, where you get the loan for the property and you get the fix-up funds rolled all together. But there's just different ways to be able to construct these things once you're aware of the landscape and you can ninjafy some things. And so, the idea of, private money to close on the property and a gap funder to help fund the fix-up and the flip, now you just have to run the math and the numbers of what makes the most sense once you get to that piece of it, right? Because if you're at a buck, what did we say, 150, if you're able to sell it at that price and get someone to buy at that, now just out of that 40, you're starting to look at what you've got available because whether the gap funder's taking half, that could be half the gross, that could be half the net, it's all what the agreement comes to. So you just have to think that through because if you had to give up, if the gross profit was 40 and you had to give 20 of that off top to the gap funder and now you're at 130 with a 110 spread, you got to run your cost of commissions and whatnot, but you could still be in the black and profitable with zero funds of your own and just the labor of love that you've invested in sweat equity. So again, I'm not going to try and get to perfection on a math problem on the fly, but the idea being you could actually take a property down, use gap funding, still give up a good size cut of the profits on the back end, and with all your retail fees and realtor commissions and everything else, still close out on top with thousands in your pocket with actually $0 invested. So what's your ROI on that? It's infinity. And so, not that that's the strategy you would use all the time, but just looking at the creative availability of different types of funds that are out there once you get into the wilderness of what the availability of funds like that, right? Mm-hmm. Someone could say, oh my gosh, I never want to use a gap funder. They're a shark. They take 50% of the end profit. But at the same time, if your profit, you're still walking away with X amount of dollars. Let's say you make 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand with just a little bit of sweat equity, your ability to find a deal, progress conversations with a seller, make an offer, get it closed, raise the private capital to close the deal, get the gap funder to fund the deal, and whatever's profit, you might feel like you're sliced the smallest, but when you can expand the mind and looking at that as a shift in profits to percentages, you're the one that's got the lion's share of the victory because mm-hmm. It was really just all of this that orchestrated a payday purely from OPM. Mm-hmm. Now, that's probably not for the rookies out there to go and try and tackle, but at some point you get to where you have these leveled up conversations and building the network of people that are there for when the time is ready, right? You might meet a gap funder before you've got a private funder, or you might not even have some of these things available today, but you know people that might fit those descriptions. Mm-hmm. It can never hurt to have a conversation, and remember, when you're having conversations about cash flow, they're not conversations about you, right? You never want to go to a funder and talk about, will you loan me money? You're not borrowing money from them per se. You're investing. That's why you opened it up and said, here's an investment opportunity. Here's an opportunity in real estate for you to invest in and capitalize on. Would you like to pursue this with me? Mm-hmm. Right? It's a question, So that's something I think, as far as, again, looking at the spectrum of available financing for individuals and businesses in their investment journey, that the landscape is rich with different ways to do things. It's only limited by our own creativity and effort to expand our network.
Yeah.
Because they say our network
is our net worth.
Is our net worth.